Hey guys, Jexie here. Welcome back to another video. So my daughter is at the movies with a friend and I'm kind of just hanging out at the theater at the mall waiting for the movie to be over. And I thought that maybe I'd come on and just chat with you guys and, just I don't really have a topic in mind, but we'll see where it goes. So earlier today, I was watching the episode of Glee called The Quarterback, which is the show they did after Corey Monteith died of an overdose. And, I was thinking it's funny because, unfortunately, the amount of overdose deaths, are continuing to rise. And I don't know, it gets me thinking sometimes that, I feel so far away from that point in my life, I celebrated 7 years earlier this month, and it just, the idea of using and dying is not something I worry about today, and most of the people in my life are in recovery. Of course there's always new people who come into recovery, and I help them the way that I can, but for the most part I surround myself with people in recovery, and so sometimes that seems really far away, and we forget that sometimes all it takes is a single relapse, and unfortunately with the way drugs are today is sometimes that one relapse can be the end. I think that's why I feel so passionate about recovery and why I have a YouTube channel to begin with. If I could just help one person not use just for one day, then it feels worth it, recovery is hard, especially at the beginning, and for addicts, a lot of times, we don't really believe that the consequences are going to happen to us. We don't believe that we're ever going to be those people that overdose. Even people who have had overdoses and survived them don't think that an overdose death is really ever going to happen to them. A lot of times we say things we know logically that those outcomes are possible, but deep within us, we don't really feel that way. And the sad thing is that none of us are immune, right? It really doesn't matter what your tolerance is or what your life is like one use could be the end. Sorry, I got a phone call that I answered, and so now I'm gonna be totally on a different track, I'm sure. I don't know, sometimes I don't know, and I really enjoy having a YouTube channel because I really enjoy communicating with other people in recovery and feeling like it matters in some way. I know it's not the most exciting thing to watch on YouTube. I know watching drama videos or craft videos or whatever is way more exciting than watching someone talk about recovery, right? But I feel like having the opportunity to share about my recovery on a platform like this, obviously I'm never going to have 5 million subscribers because I doubt that many people care about my experience with recovery, right? But even if I can just help out as small people, I know a lot of people say oh, it's about helping somebody else, but I really do believe that, because if I didn't have the support when I first got into recovery, if I didn't have people who really, really cared about my well-being, it would have been a lot harder. As I said earlier, recovery is difficult. It's hard to not use drugs. People who don't have an addiction problem do not understand that. Using drugs changes our entire brain chemistry and changes our habits. It changes everything, right? And so to not use is not as simple as just not picking up a drug. And I think that's the most frustrating thing as somebody in recovery, is when people call other people junkies, and they wonder why people look, if using drugs is destroying your life, why not just not use? That sounds completely logical, right? And if it were that easy, people wouldn't be dying all over the place from using drugs, right? It is not that easy to just not use, and it's hard to understand that mentality of addiction if you haven't been there. It's hard to describe to other people. My definition of an addict, the one that I think best describes addiction is an addict is someone who uses drugs when they don't want to use drugs. And I remember crying my eyes out that I didn't want to use, like, while I was using, right? Like, that's crazy. That's a crazy way to live. And it's sad because it's so true. Like, most people who are super sick in active addiction, if they could, like, snap their fingers and not be addicted anymore, like, they would choose that. Like, nobody wants to be addicted to drugs. Like, don't get me wrong, when I first started using drugs, like, it was fun. And if you've never used drugs, maybe you don't understand that either. But there's a feeling about getting outside yourself, getting away from yourself, that is very addicting, even if the drug itself isn't, you know? Whether it's to give you more energy, calm you down, like, make you see things, feel connected, right? Like, there's 100 reasons on why somebody would use drugs at the beginning. The problem is that very quickly, especially for addicts, that using drugs because it's fun to using drugs every day and it becoming a way of life happens without you even realizing it. And it's hard to explain to people who don't get it, right? Like, I can't tell you how many times I hear people like, well, too bad for them, they made the choice, right? But I would argue that most drug addicts didn't make the choice, right? If they're getting to a point where they're using and dying, they no longer have a choice. And, like, maybe it's a cop-out, maybe it sounds like excuses, but I know how hard it was for me to stop using, right? Like, I know the struggle that it was to not use drugs anymore. Like, I know what that was. And, you know, luckily keeping that fear and that, like, alive is what keeps me from trying to use drugs again. Not that I have any reason to want to use, but the fear is healthy, right? I watch people OD and die what seems like all the time. And so for me, that fear is what keeps me from wanting to use drugs at any point. And that includes alcohol. When I say drugs, I'm talking about alcohol too. There are plenty of people who have the same problem with alcohol. And to me, alcohol is a drug. But it's why I don't bother drinking. It lowers your inhibitions and it makes me more likely to make other bad choices too. So I stay away from all of it. I don't know. I don't know if I said anything worth listening to. Perhaps I'm just rambling because I'm bored waiting for my daughter. I've got like almost 2 hours still to busy myself. But I don't know. I think that it's important that before we judge anybody for anything, that we try to understand what a person's going through. You know, why not help people? I feel like if we all were just a little bit more compassionate, a little bit more empathetic, then maybe we could really get people into help, right? Get people into rehabs and detoxes and stuff. Get people into 12-step recovery programs, or, you know, because it's amazing when you see somebody who enters into recovery, who has been really, really struggling, who hadn't ever been able to stop using, and then you see them like 30 days later, 90 days later, 6 months later, a year later, they're getting their kids back, they're getting their life back, they have a job now. You would never know them if you talked to them before, you know, like if you talked to them after having a year clean, like you would never know that they struggled with drugs. People are so different, right? Like the person you are when you're using is not the person you are when you're clean. So why are we judging people who are using for who they are when they're using? I don't know. Think about yourself at your worst day, your worst attitude. Maybe you're angry, or maybe you're depressed, or maybe, you know, whatever. Think about how you are like at your worst. And imagine if everybody you knew judged you as a whole person for that one day when you were at your worst. It's kind of a defeating feeling. So maybe instead we should see the hope of how somebody can be, how being in a recovery program and working on themselves can make people their best selves, right? Judge people for their best. I don't know. I know I'm all over the place today. As you guys know, I have seasonal affective disorder, you know, or seasonal depression, and I struggle a lot this time of year with focusing and figuring out like what I want to say and how I want to say it. So my videos are always a little bit more obscure this time of year. But I don't know, I just thought it would be nice to come on and talk. So I hope that you got something out of this video. If not, leave a comment, let me know, like, hey, this was terrible. You know, leave a like if you think it deserves it. If you haven't subscribed, please do. It helps me in a big way. In the description, there'll be a link to my brand new Discord, which is really, really exciting. I'm going to be making a tutorial video. It may go up, it'll probably go up after this video, but it's possible it goes up before. If it is, I'll leave a card up here. If not, then, you know. And yeah, if you want to join my Patreon, you can do that. And Wednesday nights, we always do a live trivia at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All are welcome. No drama. Even if there's someone in there you don't like, we all have a good time. So yeah, I hope you guys are all having a great weekend. Well, it'll be the week by the time this is posted. But yeah, I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye, guys.